point you realize it. And now you went freelance, which for a lot of people, and we've had other people on the show say the same thing, that's a scary choice to make. Like you're giving up stability for freelance. And how do you work through that and decide, this is it, baby, I'm going to make
Yeah.
donuts?
Okay. So just speaking about freelance. So, I worked initially as a production artist where I was working hourly as like a temp worker, getting sent out. Then I was an art director and I worked as a full-time art director. And then I also worked as like a freelance art director. And I was kind of on that like track up, where you start doing production, then you become an art director. Once you become an art director, you become an assistant creative director, then a group creative director, then you're a creative director. And so I kind of like marched up those chunks, but maybe somewhat unusual for a career path is I tended to do those and I would kind of make the leap between one job and another, and I'd be at that job for a fairly long time within the industry. It's not uncommon. I didn't like jumping jobs that much. I landed in some place. I kind of wanted to be there for a while. Became a production artist, got hired on full time, ended up as like an assistant art director with them and had worked there for, 4 or 5 years, jumped to another place as an art director, was there, ended up being there, and it ended as like an assistant creative director in that place, then jumped somewhere else. But between those, I was actually freelancing, get laid off or the gig would end. Sometimes I would get recruited, but a lot of times it just sort of had run its course. And I would just freelance for a couple of years, either doing production or helping people with projects, starting sort of like small agencies with friends to see what would happen. And I'd freelance for a couple of years. So I have done stints of freelancing throughout my career, and I'm blessed to be in the Bay Area and have had most of my career in the Bay Area. Was at a couple of agencies that were fairly big. So you just make a lot of connections. So people will call you and be like, oh, hey, I need this thing. Can you help me out? Kind of get a lot of work through word of mouth. Talk about like what COVID did. So I started freelancing again in 2018. And at the time, I kind of told myself, like, I'm not going to go back into the agency world. I'd kind of just been burnt out on it. I had been at some big agencies, I'd been at much smaller agencies. And I just kind of reached this point where I was like, maybe I want to go. I'd never really worked on like the client side, like directly within a client. So I was thinking about doing that. And in the meantime, I was like, well, while I'm doing that, I still need to pay the bills. So I'll freelance, and was doing that. And the beauty of being a freelancer is that discovered is you have a lot more control over your time and your day. So I can choose I want to go to the fencing gym and go fence for an afternoon. I can do that. I can get a lesson. I can do whatever it is I want to do without having to worry about telling my boss. I just need to get the work done on time. And so this last stint, I kept freelancing, and then COVID hit. And I basically was like, okay, well, I'm just going to figure it out. It's definitely less stable than a full-time job. I'm still doing fine financially, but honestly, one of the things that made me sort of make the leap from going with the donuts is that at the beginning of 2023, like my freelance work, just for whatever reason, if you're familiar with the advertising business in 2023, it was garbage. AI just starting to show up. I cannot tell you, like on LinkedIn, how many friends of mine who are my age and sort of my level, months without any work, burning through savings, burning through all that sort of stuff. And I was lucky enough in that I was still getting some freelance work. I'd already started this transition into doing product work. So I had some there, but that was sort of I tend to think of it as like a 40-hour work week, right? Even though you work more or less, but that was covering maybe 40% of my expenses. I was like looking at ways, well, how do I make up that difference? And I was looking at, well, I've got the donuts. We're going to give it a shot. And then once I got into PAX and I knew I was going to be at PAX in like the early summer of 2023, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this the absolute best shot I can, set myself up for the best chance for success and see how it goes.
Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a Designer Con production. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at deconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.